Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Book Chat. I have a fantastic guest for you guys to meet and learn about today. And we're just going to be chatting about her work and anything that comes up in casual conversation. So let me bring her in. Good morning. Well, I guess it may not be morning where you're at.
No, it's actually afternoon. It's like mid-afternoon where I'm at now.
Nice. Well, go ahead and tell our listeners and viewers who you are and a little bit about your work.
When I write as Chioma Nnani, I write multicultural fiction for women aged 18 and above who want to be strong, independent, and fulfilled. I hold a an undergraduate law degree from the University of Kent in Canterbury, and then a postgraduate certificate in food law from the Montfort University, and they're both in the UK. And somehow I'm not actually practicing law, but here I here I'm also the CEO of a storytelling company that is based in Nigeria, and I'm really glad to be here.
Awesome. I'm excited to have you. And I also am one of those, I have a degree in kinesiology to practice physical therapy, like sciences, and I don't use it either. I found myself drawn to the writing world, and here I am. It's just kind of, I feel like it fits me better.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So let's talk about some of your work. Do you feel like your degree has helped you with writing some of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. The first one that's called Forever There for You. There is rather one of the subjects that is treated is fiction, it's a full-length fiction novel, but one of the subjects that's treated in it is domestic violence, and it happens in the UK, where there are actually laws that are enforced. Obviously, some people slip through the cracks and all that, and so, what I knew about that in relation to the law, it did come into play quite a lot when I was writing, because obviously, I studied this before I wrote it, and so I'd written a lot um, of it about incidents, and just in a way that it actually made sense to the story. So it wasn't like, oh, here's a law lesson, right? And then the second book, which is actually a collection of short stories, there isn't any, let me think, because actually a collection of short stories, no, there isn't any legal sort of knowledge in there, but it's more from a media perspective, right? Many of the people in there, so there's one story in there about this boss chick in the media who, um, this guy that she knows really wants to ask her out, and he's completely in love with her, but has no idea how to go about it because of the perception. So I don't know how it is in the US, but in Nigeria, and I think in some parts of the UK as well, if a woman is in the media, people just, especially a woman of color, right? People just assume that she is loose, and so like that she's seeing multiple men at once. And then on some level, because of the way that the media, like projects things, you see this person in this dress and in these shoes and all that, and you just think, oh gosh, they're so rich, which, you know, not necessarily true. Sometimes those things are borrowed. And so, of course, in this particular story, in Because Home Is, this guy is seriously assessing himself in terms of, what do I bring to the table? What do I bring to her that she hasn't seen before? Because it is actually true that while not every woman of color in the media is loose and seeing multiple men, a lot of men do ask them out, right? Or ask us out. And so you're kind of, I mean, if you're a guy who's very serious, you're kind of thinking, okay, what do I say to her that she hasn't had before that She's not going to be like, oh, you're just one of those guys. And so that's like, that's just one of the stories. So Love is, so the first book, there is a component of domestic violence there, which is like law, the legal aspect as well. Second book is more or less media stuff. And
Mhm.
then the third novel. So there's actually another one which is a an e-box set. So
Ooh.
yeah, an ebook box set. So it's technically not mine. I was just a contributor. And then the third proper one that I am actually currently working on, the protagonist is a beauty influencer. And I remember when I got the idea, just thinking, I'm not gonna write that. I don't know anything about, I mean, I scrub up nicely, but to actually say, right, I'm going to write about this beauty influencer. I can't just say, oh, she's a beauty influencer and move on, right? I have to, just like with the other books, you have to write things that make the reader know, okay, I know what I'm talking about. And I remember feeling so unqualified. That is the word. And I just thought, okay, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. With the first one, I kind of knew because, again, I've got that law background. The second one, I kind of knew because, well, I knew quite a lot because of the media things and some of the things that I wrote about in the second one are things that I've actually dealt with. But with this third one, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I was very resistant to the idea of writing it. And I remember working out one morning and thinking to myself, all right, what is the problem? Why do you feel like you can't do this? And I was literally like speaking out loud, but to myself. So the way that I'm speaking to you now, speaking out loud to myself and answering myself, like, it's because you feel like you don't know anything about this world, like, the beauty world in that way. I mean, at least, I mean, I know what lipstick is and lip gloss and all that, but how this thing really works, you don't know. And that's your problem. And for me, um, I, on some level, I feel like I need to know everything about a particular thing before I step out. And so to write like a whole book on this thing, that this world that I'm not a part of. And that was when I realized, hang on, that's actually what's going to make the story work. Because the girl, the protagonist in the book, she literally falls into this world. She has no intention. Again, it's multicultural fiction, but um, she comes from obviously culture and has lived in an era where um, I want to be a makeup artist. I want to. That was just not something she could say to her parents. And then she goes over to London, and but she's very good at makeup stuff, and she does it. In fact, she's doing it behind her father's back, and she's got an accomplice in her aunt, who is her father's sister and is also her godmom. And he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll deal with him. This is how you make money, like, So there's that thing of it's not so much about beauty as I mean, there is that component, but there is a thing of using a skill that you have that you're naturally blessed with that you might not have gone to school for,
Mhm.
right? And monetizing it. And so when this happens to her in London, of course, because she's going on the internet and of course people know who she is, she's suddenly famous. And you're kind of like, oh, I didn't know this was gonna happen. So of course she has to, deal with that. And I remember when I understood this is about being unqualified. That is the story. That's
Yeah.
the crux of it. And then I figured out, I was like, oh, okay. So this is the actual story. So when I say the story, I mean, and you're a writer as well, you know that it's not about the outline, it's the thread running through it. And I wrote the first draft in 3 weeks. I've never done that before. When I figured out
Wow.
this is what, yeah, I wrote the first draft in 3 weeks, and that was like about 50,000 words. Then I wrote the main manuscript, the proper one that's going to the editor, in another 3 weeks. I've never done that before. Like, if anyone had told me that, I'd be like, no, that's not possible. And I think that the way that the main one now that's going to the editor is like 80 something, like nearly 85,000 words,
Hmm.
right? And so for me, it was, when I got to that point of just getting clarity on, you feel unqualified to do this, and that's fine. That is okay. I think when that happened, this block literally just disappeared or whatever. And I was able to um, give myself permission, as it were, to write
Yeah.
this thing without knowing everything that I thought was supposed to happen, or I thought, the way that I thought things were supposed to go. And yeah, it's quite a lesson for me.
Yeah, no, that is an excellent like lesson because that's something I've kind of come to the realization myself lately. Is like nobody's a bigger block to your writing and holding you back than yourself and your self doubt. And I don't know what I've been writing for about 3 years, but it took all that time. It literally like hit me like 2 weeks ago when I went to a writers convention, and I was just like,
Hmm.
oh, like why am I doing this? Because I, like you said, I felt unqualified too because I'm sitting in a room with all of these people who've been doing it for years and everything. But I'm like, everybody starts somewhere and has to move through this and has to learn as they go. And that's the thing you got to give yourself like grace for is you're learning. You're still learning. There's never a time you're not going to be learning. So, well, that's fantastic that you were ever like very you were able to work through that. So,
Absolutely. And I
yeah.
think, because some of us have got, just listen to that advice of write what you know, right?
Mhm.
And so, in some respect, when you're writing what you know, there is a safety net. And then you now get this idea of something that you have no idea of. And you're like, I'm supposed to write what I know. I don't understand. No, that means I'm not going to do it. But like I said, when I understood and gave myself permission to not know everything about this particular thing that I really don't have any reason to know about because I don't exist in that world, in that industry, then it went easier for me. I think it was, I mean, this was actually a shock. Like I wrote an entire manuscript in 3 weeks. Like even the short story collection, I did not write in 3 weeks. It took me more than
Yeah.
3 weeks. So yeah, that's like, yeah,
It's mind blowing because I'm sitting here, I'm like, holy cow, like to write and finish that in 3 weeks. And that is impressive. And in the story you mentioned, she kind of goes behind her parents' back. I want to touch on the
absolutely.
topic of the whole cultural, oh my gosh, I'm getting tongue tied, cultural and generational differences that being a blessing or a burden. Because I feel like that
Mm.
kind of hints at it because you mentioned that her family kind of wants her to do one thing, but she is finding herself shifting to something she wants to do that she enjoys. Like, let's talk about that a little bit. What are some of the things she had to overcome to get there?
She had to do quite a lot of naughty things and some things that are not, some things that just were just ridiculous mistakes, and some things that you kind of, I think when you read, you're gonna go, come on, really? How did you think this was gonna play out? Like, you know, and she starts this when she is a teenager, and so how when you're a teenager and you think you know everything, so and that you have everything figured out. And so there's that element as well. And her aunt and godmother understands and sees something that even she herself can't see. So she's encouraging her and she's doing certain things that, of course, this girl's parents are like, if you're enabling this girl, she's going to destroy herself. But it, in many ways, her aunt is that person that says, I don't approve 100% of how you're doing what you're doing. And the truth is, I don't actually understand what you're doing because it's not a conventional job, right? It's
Mhm.
not, so it's not like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. And there's this one time, spoiler alert, there's this one time when she goes to so in Nigeria, the Nigerian film industry and entertainment industry is called Nollywood. And so
Yeah.
she goes to a Nollywood set to do makeup, like to be the makeup artist. And her father finds out and is like, You're no. So it goes down because he knows she does this makeup thing, but he doesn't know that she's very serious about it. And in her mind, she's thinking, I'm gonna make money and they're gonna be so proud of me. And her father's like, no, I don't want you in this world because of the circles he moves in. He's a businessman, so he's heard certain things about women in the entertainment industry. And he's like, no daughter of mine is doing that. And so because in Nigeria, we don't, or rather at the time that the time frame that I wrote that in, so there's actually a year stamp there. We did not have anything like the studio system. So like how in Hollywood there's a physical place called Hollywood. Nigeria doesn't have that. And
Hmm.
so what that means is that a lot of those shoots and filming takes place in hotels. Now
Oh,
you're gonna hear your teenage daughter went to a hotel to go. You're like, come on, really? And so so that's the thing that her aunt and her godmother is like, that I don't approve of. Why did you do this?
yeah.
I get what you're trying to do, but you went to a hotel, and there's that thing in Nigeria of decent girls, especially young girls, don't go to a hotel. And in her case, she just did something crazy. She didn't even tell anybody where she was going, which, you know, if she had said, they would have said no. And so, of course, when something happens on set, which means she doesn't come back as quick as she believes she would come back home, meaning that her parents are waiting for her when
Oh,
they come home and they're looking for her because this chick like just sneaks out of the entire house. So nobody, her younger sister either doesn't know or won't say where she went. And the gate man honestly doesn't know
oh
because
no.
the gate man was doing something he shouldn't have been doing. Yeah, so it's like, and imagine you leave your house believing I've got my kids here. You come home, only one is there. Where's the other one? You ask the gate man who is at the gate because there's literally only one way in and out of the environment. And he's like,
Mhm.
I don't know. And so there's all that stuff. And her parents are hearing these things. About how she's the makeup artist in an industry that they said, I don't even want you doing this thing at all. So, and so there's that aspect, and there's her thinking, I'm just trying to be financially independent because that is actually the crux of the whole that's part of that's her reason wanting to be financially independent, and she has her reasons behind that because there's a backstory there where she just believes I don't want to have to rely on any man in that way. And so yeah, things go down and some are quite painful.
Oh. I get the whole panicky thing her parents did though, because I would completely lose it if I woke up and my one of my children were gone and I didn't know where they were. So it's also kind of like so many. I'm a very anxious person, so many different scenarios would go through my head. But I'm also like super proud of her for stepping out and pursuing her dreams. Because that's something it's hard to do, especially with all the things parents push into your head growing up and everything. Like, no, you need to do this, you need to do this because this is going to make you money. This is not going to make you much money. But you're like, it's not like, not, I feel like it's not a thing you need to worry about because if you pursue something you love, you're going to find a way to make money with it and make a life with it, you know?
Hmm. And I think that's one of the huge things that her aunt and who is her godmother, does for her. So it's that whole, okay, I get it. You're not gonna go do a regular job. You're gonna do this thing, but her aunt knows something that she doesn't know, which is that a lot of actresses are poor, and so she's like, no, you're not going to do that because A, your father is going to kill you. He doesn't want you in that. And two, what would be the point, right? You're not going to make money. So her aunt actually um, does certain things to make sure that her skill makes money for her
Mhm.
and gets her thinking about that. So it's like, okay, look, this glitz and glamour, no, we want to, we want to monetize this and want to make money from this thing so that you can. And so she's actually making money and she makes money and her father has no idea, which is ridiculous
Yeah.
because she's got these bank accounts in foreign currency because of this thing, and this is it when she's still in Nigeria, that her father has no idea of. And her aunt is like, do not tell him. When the time is right, we'll tell him. And of course, circumstances happen and situations and the time becomes right. And her father is right, like, okay, fine. So you want to go to London to do your postgraduate degree, and there's not really anything I can do about it. um, and you even have your own money, so I can't really stop you. And so obviously, when she crosses that hurdle, she then goes to London, and there's the culture shock because she's never been there before. There's a culture shock, and then dealing with university because I attended university in the UK, and so the way that I think and the way that I approach lecturers and all that is different from the way that people who attended university in Nigeria behave. And I can tell the difference. I usually can because the ones who did their first degree in Nigeria, they're usually more afraid when they cross over to the UK or the US for their master's degree because of I mean, it's difficult. It might be difficult for some people to tell, but I can tell. And so there's that culture shock. And again, like, the master's degree is literally 1 year and you're trying to fit everything in and trying to deal with all that stuff. Just trying to deal with that, trying to deal with the pace of academics. And then this beauty influencing thing comes along. And then all these things that she did not bargain for happen, like trolls, right?
Mhm.
People are trolling her on her YouTube channel. They are saying all kinds of horrible things about her.
Ooh.
And the thing with trolls is that I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they're very sick,
Yeah.
shallow
Yeah.
cowards because they're not living their real names, right? I mean, they can see her because she's there and she's got her name and they know all this stuff, but her bots, she doesn't know anything about them. And in fact, some of them, she's like, oh, okay, fine, I'll block you, but there's not any limit on the number of email addresses a person is allowed to open. So some of them actually, still go and open more email addresses and all of that. So she's having to deal with that. She's having to deal with being a celebrity on campus. And I feel like, there's two types that are usual. Um, when it comes to celebrities who are in school. So there are people who are already celebrities and then they enroll in a school, right? And
Mhm.
then there are people who are normal regular people who after they graduate they become celebrities because of their work. But she's not in any of those categories. She was a normal person, got into school, something happened, and then she became famous. And so it's like, okay, I want to still be normal, but the reality is I'm not. And how do I deal with all this? Yeah. And so she's trying to be anonymous sometimes, and that's just ridiculous. It's not possible because then everybody feels like, and I feel like, when you've got X number of followers on social media, like people just feel like they know you and that they have a right to be saying certain kinds of things about you behind your back, sometimes to your face. And so she's dealing with that. She's also got her personal issues. She's also got legal issues, some of which she actually causes herself because of
Mhm.
her ignorance, which is something that I felt was really important because a lot of um, people who are doing this creative thing, um, they just go, I mean, okay, something as simple as using somebody's song on your video,
Yeah.
right? You don't have permission. Don't do that. And some people genuinely don't know that that is all shades of wrong and illegal. And so she's
Yeah.
dealing with all that and dealing with life as well. And
Ye-
there's also that thing of, because I feel like we are groomed to think about getting to the next step always. And we somehow feel like when I get to the next step, whatever the next step is, when I publish my book, when it becomes a bestseller, when I get my baby, when I get a promotion, when I that's going to make you happy. You don't understand that. No, it's not. And two, every new level has new devils.
Yes.
So she has to learn that
Yeah.
this, that material things, and even sometimes when you get a thing that you think you want, it it's fine, but that's not going to make you happy if you weren't
Yeah.
already happy, right? So there's
Yeah.
all these, I feel like there's all these different things, and that's why I'm glad that I chose to write it, because in
Mhm.
some ways it's not about beauty in itself. It's not about lipstick and I don't know, highlighter, and it will, it will resonate with people who are struggling, who
Yeah.
are aspiring beauty influencers, or who are actual beauty influencers. Because I mean, I read some of the things that people who are beauty influencers and some other women in the media say about being trolled, and I'm like, what is wrong with some of these people? Like, why are you? I mean, if I can't understand, if I don't like you, I'm not going to follow you on social media. So what is
Mhm.
going on in these people's heads, right? And so I think, just the way that she deals with um, her, her own issues, whether it's trolls, whether it's trying to figure out how to really be something other than someone who just makes up on camera, in terms of monetizing that and not just making money, but actually investing it. Because that's another thing that people don't, people really don't know. It's like, oh, okay, oh, this brand is going to pay me X amount of pounds or dollars for unboxing this video, for unboxing this product. And then you take that money and then you go and blow it on a bag or a car. I'm not saying those things are bad, but then those those are things that are going to go down in value. If you see what I'm saying, and then the next month it's
Yeah.
going to be you're going to be back to square one. And so there's all these different issues. And at the end of the day, it is multicultural fiction, but it is a real coming of age story of how she's going to deal with all this stuff, whether it's
Yeah.
things that other people are doing, whether it's things that a system is doing, or whether it's things that even she's doing and not realizing how ridiculous some of the things that she's doing are, because and how she actually even endangers herself sometimes without realizing.
Yeah. And I'm curious. Okay. So she goes through all this stuff. She's got all of this stuff coming at her from like every direction. It seems like she's got cultural shock. She's in a whole new place. She's having to deal with like stuff with her family and the guilt and probably that goes on with that.
Hmm.
How does she keep her sanity? Like what does she do to keep like her focus moving forward to her end goal?
Obviously, I mean, she makes mistakes, but she has a friend. There's always a friend. Just like in in Forever There for You, there was a really good friend who, I mean, well, when I say good, I mean that she was a good friend to her, not that she was a completely good person, because she does get her involved in certain things that you're like, I'm not really sure you should be doing that. But this character in the book about the beauty influencer, she has a friend who just tells her, look, this is what you need to be doing. But she does it in a respectful way, not like, because they are actually the same age. And so it's not like, oh, you must do this or else. So this friend of hers has the presence of mind to recognize that this girl is stubborn. She's going to do what she's going to do, but I'm going to give her advice and tell her this is how you can do this. This is an option, right? And because this friend has proven herself, and she's been in the system longer. And when I say in the system, I mean she's been in England longer. She knows certain other things because of her own background. And again, like I said, it is a real coming of age story because I think sometimes people think that just because, for instance, just because you live in England or you were born there, that you know everything, and you don't, because there will be, people who do read the book will come to realize, like I said, just why this friend knows certain things. This friend is what, like 21, 22, 21, 22 year olds don't know. I mean, at least in my experience, I didn't meet a lot of 21, 22 year olds when I was at uni that knew, that were very clued on when it came to um, handling finances and investing and actually making wealth, especially when there were people of color. Right? I just didn't, but this friend does, and that's actually part of why she exists, to just to ensure that these lessons are there and they are passed on. Because I feel, like I said, this character, her main thing is I want to be financially independent, but then her friend lets her know that it's not, there's the hustle, and then there's the, just doing certain things to make sure that the hustle pays, and you don't have to be doing that 24/7, 365 days a week. And sorry, yeah, yeah.
That's a hard lesson to take into the hustle thing, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like that's all something a lot of people teach. You got to keep going, but you also have to take care of like your mental health and take a break every now and then.
Yeah, yeah.
With your writing, like, do you have a routine that you stick with when you write?
Not really. I mean,
Mhm.
when I know that I have to do something, sometimes I just get on with it. I'm not gonna, unless there is a reason for me just not being able to write something, and I maybe I haven't realized why yet. I will just get on with it. For instance, I am writing the sequel to this story that I've just been talking to you about, and it's not. I don't know why yet, but it's not flowing as easily as the first one they did. And it's not like there's not enough story there. In fact, I think that there's too much story in in the sequel. In the sequel. And but it is actually a continuation of the first book. And so I know I'm gonna get to it at some point and figure it out. I don't know what's going on there, but I'm gonna figure it out. So my routine, actually, it depends on where I am in my head space, and what it is that I know I have to achieve. And then, like I said, I mean, I did it in 3 weeks. And I think
Yeah.
that's how, even that in itself has become a bit of an albatross, because I remember when I didn't finish the second one in 3 weeks. I think I'm still in chapter two. And I'm like, but I've done this before. Why can't I do it in 3 weeks? I'm like, no, no, calm down, calm down. Each book has its own process. you know, that's okay. Just do this thing one thing at a time and see.
Yeah. But that's awesome that you are able to like know the difference between the mindset and how quickly you can get it out, and you're not hard on yourself about that. That's a good thing, because a lot of authors struggle with that. So that is very good. If you could give advice to a new writer that's working their way towards publishing their first book, what would you give them?
Okay, so the first thing that I would say is that you should realize that people only buy from brands that they know, love, and trust. And this is whether it's a corporate brand or it's a personal brand. And so you need to build a personal brand.
Mhm.
And what I found, because I run a publishing company, so I'm not just publishing myself, I'm publishing others as well, is that from talking to potential authors and actual authors, the first story that they write, and also with singers as well, the first story that they write, the first thing that they write, that's what they really want to say.
Mhm.
And they, I mean, and this is before marketing or branding experts get involved and start telling them, don't do this, dress this way. That is actually what they want to say. And so if you can understand that and condense it, then it helps you with your personal branding, it helps you with your marketing as well, and it helps you actually understand your writing process better. So there are some places I don't go anymore.
Mhm.
And of course, this is like, this is a very expensive lesson because at first I didn't know what my personal brand was. So I was literally, like trying to pitch every reviewer and go on every radio station and go on every podcast and blah, blah, blah. And so when you figure out your personal brand and then you really hone in on that, then you understand that your reader is just like you. They're human being like you.
Mhm.
They're looking for a particular thing. They're looking for a solution. They're looking for a story. If you hear names like Sophie Kinsella or James Patterson or Martina Cole or J.D. Robb, there's something that comes to your mind for each one. They're telling the same stories all over again. I mean, like Confessions of a Shopaholic. Come on, she's got like a whole series out of it, but it's the same story over and over again. Yet she's
Mhm.
selling every time. There is a reason for that. And so the first thing that I would say is figure out your personal brand. Figure out, really sit with yourself and understand why you're writing what it is that you're writing. Like, first of all, what is important to you? Because when you know what is important to you, you need to be honest about why. You're going to figure that out. And you need to find partners that won't, that will be on board with that. So as a company, as a publishing company, there's some genres I just don't publish. I don't understand them or I just don't want to deal with them. And then there's some that I'm fine with, so we'll publish them, right?
Yeah.
But then it's that understanding of, look, I'm partnering with this author, and so I feel like everything that we do is a partnership. So every media appearance is a partnership. So even the editor, because I edit, but not my own work because I've got blinders on. But the editor that we use for the books that I don't edit that comes out of my company, that is a partnership. The cover designer, that is a partnership. And
Mhm.
the funny thing is that you know all of this, but your name is the one on the cover. And so if you don't choose the right partners because you don't know your personal brand or you didn't take it seriously, nobody is going to know all these people.
Mhm.
Everybody else is going to be like, oh no, because your name is on the cover. And so that is now what people are going to come to expect whenever they see your name, right?
Yeah.
People expect a certain kind of book from me or certain kind of quality. I mean, I'm saying this now and I'm sure they've heard it before, but I have an editor, but they don't know who the editor is until they open the book and see the editor's name in it. But then when they see my name on the cover, they go, right, we can be sure of this kind of quality, right? And so I would honestly say, it is that first thing. Know what your personal brand is. Don't be too hard on yourself. And just understand that as long as you've articulated what your personal brand is, not what you want it to be, like because sometimes you're thinking, oh, this is what I want it to be for whatever reason. I don't know if you've got blinders on, maybe somebody has told you something about how what you are is not good enough and you have to be something else. What you actually are might be good enough to sell you,
Mhm.
um, because you can't, there's only so long that you can lie to yourself. I mean, what I found out is sometimes, like when you see artists and, people in public either taking drugs or doing certain things, sometimes it's to cope with the different lives that they are forced to lead, whether it is, there's the brand that their
Mhm.
PR person or their agent has come up with and said, this is who you are, you need to do this. But then this person is not, that's not who they are. And so
Yeah.
sometimes you're trying to cope with, okay, should I say this? Should I say that? And then they start drinking to either numb the pain or do something that they're not supposed to be doing. And I just find out, okay, no, let's just start with who you really are. It's harder for you to lie and fall apart if what I'm projecting you as is what you already were. Like it's easier for all of us. I'm not gonna be afraid that you're gonna go to a radio station and say something that's completely off brand because what I told these people you are is really what you are. So it is that thing of, uh, decide what your personal brand is, and that is actually how people pick you. I say this, and some people would think it's very funny, but I feel like as authors, we should all be pick me's. And I know that that sounds derogatory, especially in terms of the way that that phrase is used in popular culture. But if you think about the fact that, if you remember when you were much younger and you had to play sports in school, like where they had to pick
Yeah.
teams, right?
Yes.
Do you remember there was always somebody that all the teams wanted, and there was always the one person that was always standing there and just had to go to the team with the least numbers by default,
Yeah.
but they didn't really want you. And sometimes it wasn't because you were a bad person or that they didn't like you. It was just that for that game or whatever, they didn't know what you could bring to the table or the game as they were. They didn't like what they'd seen you do before, the fact that they hadn't seen you win before. And so they
Yeah.
didn't trust your abilities. And sometimes, you surprise them. And so if you look at it like that, when you think about the fact that with books, readers, whether it is people who are actually, doing the reading or they're librarians or they're not going to pick the last book on the shelf just because it's there. It's not
Yeah.
happening. They're only going to pick the first one that they really want to pick because the author has done things. So again, it's that personal branding thing, like, has given them an expectation of this is the content you're going to get and this is the quality you're going to get as soon as you see my name on this thing, right? And so when you consider that and you think, oh, this is this is actually why they get picked. And it's so like you can be like, oh, I don't care, like anybody who doesn't want to pick. No, you can say that until you keep, you're always the last one to be picked by default.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, it's not going to be funny anymore. You're not going to want to play it anymore. And that is actually why some writers stop writing. It's not necessarily because you're a horrible writer. It's just because like all these things that should underpin your personal brand and, just the writing and the process and all that, sometimes you don't know what they are and you don't know where to get help. And so at some point you kind of go, I don't want to do this anymore, which is a shame because sometimes you do have a message that there's a lot of people who are waiting to hear that message and it's going to be good for them and it's going to be healing and it's going to be, affirming for them, but they can't find you because like I say, if I sell a hair cream, but I
Mm-hmm.
put it in a tub that says it's hair relaxer, it's not going to get to the people that it's supposed to get to.
Yeah.
And people who are looking for hair relaxer, they're going to use that cream, find that it's cream, and they're going to be very angry because
Yeah.
they're going to feel cheated, right? And so that's
Yeah.
that thing that I think some authors do where they think they're being cheeky and they think they're being clever by half, where, they try and like put their book in the wrong Amazon category and think that nobody will notice. Readers will notice and they'll penalize
Yeah.
you with their reviews and they will not pick you. So, yeah.
That happens a lot. I've seen that a lot. So that they try to cheat the system with it just to get like one of the bestseller tags and stuff. Yeah.
Mm.
Well, we have reached the end of our time. So go ahead and tell our viewers and listeners where they can find you and your work.
Okay, so if you go to fearlessstoryteller.org/links, you will find everything about my company and what we do, who we serve, the books that my company has published, as well as my own books. And then my own web page or website page is talent.fearlessstoryteller.org/our-talent /Chioma Nnani as one word. I am going to give you the URL because I don't think anybody is going to be able to remember. Nobody's going to be able to remember this. They're going to be like, what did she say? So I'm going to give you that and then you can put that in the description area or somewhere on your on your video.
Yes, absolutely. I will. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me on the show this morning and chatting. We'll have to do
Likewise.
this again.